Hi, welcome to the studio with me, Nick Church. Today is one for all you Lightroom users. It's about splitting off a piece of your Lightroom catalogue. I'll be talking about why you would want to do that, how do you do it within the Lightroom interface, and also how do you bring everything back together safely at the end. Now before we move on, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, there is a guy that did not go to the barbers in time for lockdown, and you are absolutely right. But you didn't need to mention it. So rude. In a previous video, I talked about why you would absolutely not want to split up your Lightroom catalogue. That video is on screen now, or you can find it in the playlist for the studio below. So what is this crazy shit, and am I losing my mind altogether? No, because I still think you shouldn't split up your catalogue as part of a normal workflow because there's no performance benefit. But there are times when splitting up your catalogue can be really useful. These are generally when either you want to work on it somewhere else on a different machine, or if you've got an outsource editor. So picture the scene, you're working on a shoot on your main Lightroom setup, but you need to be somewhere else. Now what you'd like to do is transfer stuff to a laptop so you can continue editing. All right, it's 2020. If you're a wedding photographer, you've probably sold the laptop. You've probably sold a kidney, but I digress. It may be that you want to give it to an outsource editor. So what you're going to do, you could move around your main catalogue, but catalogues are really big, especially if you have previews as well. And even if you're regularly backing up, which you should be, I think moving around a catalogue is probably pretty risky. The good news is Adobe lets you export that single shoot into its own catalogue. Now that has two massive benefits. Firstly, it's much smaller. You're choosing what images go in there, whether it's a folder, a collection, or a shoot, or just a single image. It's going to be tons smaller than your main catalogue. The other one is it's a copy. You're exporting. You're not splitting your original catalogue. That stays unchanged. So if anything was to happen to that small catalogue, you've still got the original where it started. So you or your editor can then continue making changes to that shoot. And when you've finished, you just simply import that catalogue back to your main one. Adobe's really smart how it automatically does this. It knows which edits go with which image, and your catalogue's looking as if you've made the changes right there all along. So before we jump into Lightroom to see how it's done, there's two things to be aware of. The first one is presets. Now your presets live in your Lightroom app, not in your catalogue and not in your images. So they won't be present in your laptop, and they won't be present with your outsource editor. So any developed presets, any adjustment brush presets, you just need to copy those across manually. It's really easy, and I'll show you how to do it shortly. The other thing to remember is if you've exported a shoot to its own catalogue, you've done so it can be worked on externally. Don't make any changes to that shoot from your original catalogue. If you do, when things get imported back, they'll just get overwritten. So you can work on other shoots in your catalogue, just not the stuff that you've exported. We're jumping into Lightroom now, so while you're here, please subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video so far, just give it a like. So here I am on my Mac. Now what I've created here already is an export catalogue folder. So that's just where I'm going to put this exported catalogue from Lightroom. And that's what I'll use to transfer to either another machine of mine or to give to an external outsource editor. So this is what I would just drop onto a USB stick or something. All right, so moving into Lightroom. Now we talked about the fact that presets don't get moved. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to show you where to get your presets, because remember, they won't be on any other Lightroom setup you have, and your outsource editor won't have those either. But you only need to send them over once, because unless you change your presets, they're always going to be there. All right, so to find those, the easiest way is just to go to your preferences, and then in the top tab, go over to presets. And down here, you're going to see a button which says Show Lightroom Develop Presets. Now that's going to bring up either Windows Explorer or Finder on Mac, and it's going to open up the right folder. So there are my presets there. That's all the ones I use in my editing. So I'm going to copy those. Now what I've actually done is I've created a presets folder in that export catalog folder just to keep things nice and tidy. So I'm going to paste all of those in there. And then when I send my catalogue over to the new machine for the first time, the presets are going to go with it. Okay. Now, what you can also do is if you have other presets like adjustment presets or brushes, then you can do open other presets, and that's going to open up your local adjustments one. And you can do the same with those. You could copy those over as well. Okay. So that's our presets copied over. So here we have a selection of images that I'm going to export into their own catalogue. So this one just happens to be a subset of a single shoot. It's one I did recently. It's all the ones I shipped as a preview. It could also be a collection or any other way. It could be a whole folder, whatever you want to do. All right, now this is a really easy process to do. So we're just going to highlight rather all of the images that we want to do. And then we're going to go to the File menu, Export as Catalogue. Okay, now just before let's type in test catalog export. I'm going to put it into that folder I created to keep it tidy. Now these options here are worth talking through. You don't really want to include your original files, so they're your raw files, but you could do if you wanted to do that. The whole point of this, I think, is to keep things nice and small, so I don't do that. But you do want to have smart previews because you want to be able to edit this catalog. All right. I don't include available previews because there's no point including one-to-ones because you could always create those at the other end. So I just include that. So we're going to export that catalog. It's going to create any previews it needs. It will copy out that catalog and it's going to dump it into that folder. So we'll just let that process finish. There we go. Doesn't take long. So as I said before, these images don't disappear from this catalogue. We've simply now got a copy in another catalogue. So let's go and check that folder. This is the export catalogue. So we've got test catalog export, which is the name I gave it. And inside there you have the previews, because remember I said we want to have previews in there, and the catalogue itself. Now they're both pretty small. One's 572 meg. Now that does seem big for the dozen images or so it's in there. I'm not quite sure why that's so big, but what I found is that if you're adding 100 more, it doesn't get much bigger than that. So that seems to be, certainly in my testing, the lowest size I'm going to be able to get. But that's still plenty small enough to chuck on a USB stick or onto a drive, or we transfer it. Okay, so what we'd have on the new machine is we just have this folder because we've just copied it to there from our USB stick. So I'm going to go right into there and just open up that catalogue. Now what this is going to do is open up a new catalogue, which is that temporary one that we created, and it's just got those 7 or 8 images inside. That's all it's got in there. So there's none of my other work is in here. But we've got access to all these. It's taken a bit of time to load all the previews up, but it's got the smart previews because we included those. And so we could now go in and edit any of these images once it's loaded the preview in. All right, so what I'm actually going to do is just make a few changes to these just so we can see that the changes have been made. And I'm going to, there we go, I'll change the crop on that just so we can see that. We'll go back to another image and let's make this one crazy bright so we can just see that, there we go. All right, so we can see that these two have been changed. These other images are all exactly as they were before, so they're not going to change. Again, it's just loading the previews as it goes through. So what we've got here is our temporary catalogue with just those few images in it. We've made a couple of changes, so we're at the stage we would be in if an external editor had sent the catalogue back to us with their changes in, or if we'd come back and we'd made changes on our laptop and we wanted to bring those changes back into our main Lightroom catalogue. Okay, so what we're going to do is just load up my main normal catalogue. So this is going back to the original. And what we'll find is that those images will obviously still be there, but they won't have those changes that we just made because we made those to that temporary catalogue. All right, so we've come back to the main machine now and we're looking at our catalogue. And what we want to do is import the changes that were done in that temporary catalogue. So here's all the changes, here's all the files that we'd put in. What we're going to do now is import from another catalogue, and this is when we're pulling in the work that we've done in that separate catalogue. So we select it. Now what Lightroom's going to do is it's going to give a summary of the changes that it's found. It's all in one folder for this example, but if we'd done it with a collection or multiple folders, then you would see other entries here, and generally you're just going to want to tick all of those. All right, we want to keep the metadata and develop settings, which is the default option because it's those settings that we want. It's the develop changes that we want. We don't need to preserve the old settings as a copy. I'm not interested in showing a preview, so I'm just going to pull those in and it's going to bring those over. Okay, so if we go back to that shoot, what we'll see we can see it's only imported those two that I made changes to, and they are now in this group of photos that we exported earlier. We can see that that one is the one that we increased the exposure and changed the crop, and that's the one that we increased the exposure, and all the others we didn't change, so it didn't bring any settings in. All right, so that's pulled in the changes that we made on that catalog, on those photos in a separate catalog. And if we look at the develop settings, we can see that from where we did it, the export before, we've changed exposure, cropped the image a bit, so we could always go back to as it was, which I'm going to do because I don't want to change that crop. And likewise on this one, we can see that from when we exported it last time, we've added a couple of brightness changes there, which was done in the other catalogue. So as far as Lightroom's now concerned, all these changes here were done on this machine, so it doesn't know any different, which means things are really clean and it just keeps things all together. So that's all there is to it. This is a really good technique to be able to get a whole shoot or a selection of shoots off to be edited somewhere else or by someone else, and then bring everything back so it's all in your main catalogue at the end and it all looks as if it was edited all in one place. If you've got any questions on any of that, please comment below and I'll always answer. Other than that, please subscribe to the channel and please like this video if you found it useful. You said shoot him down. You're coming back tougher as a resurrection on the hill. You gotta get feet